What is the loudest sound in history? If you think it's the explosion of a giant bomb, you're wrong. The decibel scale ranges from 0 to a number you'll see at the end of the video. And don't think that 0 decibels means absolute silence, as it actually represents the weakest sound a human ear can detect. So at 10 decibels, we would have an extremely faint, barely perceptible sound, like leaves rustling in the distance. Around 20 decibels is the background noise in a television studio, a space specially isolated to prevent microphones from picking up external noise. And here we need to pause, because the decibel scale doesn't work the way you might think. It's not linear, but logarithmic. That is, those 20 decibels aren't twice as intense as 10 decibels, but 10 times more so. An increase of 10 decibels multiplies the sound intensity by 10. So at 30 decibels, 10 times louder than that TV studio, we're already dealing with a very soft whisper, the kind you say practically in your ear. At 40 decibels, we enter the ambient sound of a quiet library, an environment so tranquil that even the sound of turning a page stands out. It's no coincidence that the World Health Organization sets 40 decibels as the nighttime noise level above which your sleep begins to suffer. We reach 50 decibels, and this is your home. An average house with its everyday soft sounds. The refrigerator whirring in the background, someone walking down the hall, a muffled conversation in the next room. This is the noise your brain has decided not to hear. The noise you call silence, even though it isn't really silence. At 60 decibels, two people are talking normally, about a meter apart. These 60 decibels carry 1,000,000 times more sound energy than the faintest sound your ear can detect at 0 decibels. At 70 decibels, we have a vacuum cleaner 1 meter away. And although it may not seem like it, the World Health Organization sets 70 decibels as the limit below which you can be exposed 24 hours a day without your hearing suffering any damage. You could spend your entire life 1 meter from a vacuum cleaner and your eardrums would remain intact, although I don't recommend it. At 80 decibels, you're on the sidewalk of a busy road with continuous and clearly annoying traffic, although still without immediate damage. But we've just crossed a line, since European regulations require companies to provide hearing protection to their workers, and above 85 decibels, they must guarantee its use. 90 decibels is equivalent to being 10 meters from a diesel truck. At 100 decibels, we're already a meter away from a nightclub speaker. That volume you feel in your chest more than in your ears. Here, health authorities limit safe exposure to this level to a mere 15 minutes a day. A single night can leave you with tinnitus, temporary hearing loss, and even minor permanent damage. At 110 decibels, we have a chainsaw a meter away, the sound that compels any serious professional to wear hearing protection, because the margin of safe exposure is barely a couple of minutes before the damage starts to become real. At 120 decibels, we approach the pain threshold. The sound can be physically unbearable even for just a few seconds. For example, the loudest whistle in the world was 125 decibels, produced by an Italian, and the loudest scream ever recorded was 129 decibels by a British teacher. And at 130 decibels, the pain can be immediate, and even brief exposure can cause injury. The loudest siren in history reached 138 decibels at a distance of 30 meters. It was designed in the United States to alert the population to a possible mass attack by the Soviet Union, and many were installed throughout the country. At 140 decibels, we have a jet taking off at 50 meters, a level capable of causing almost immediate hearing damage. And if it were a fighter jet, then we would be talking about 150 decibels. A Glock 19 pistol can exceed 160 decibels. The loudest fireworks in existence are above 170 decibels. At around 194 decibels, sound reaches its limit. Beyond that, it's no longer just a very loud noise, but it pushes through the air with such force that it becomes a shockwave, like an explosion. From this point on, the decibel figures I'm showing no longer describe a normal noise, but the brutal pressure of a shockwave. So, what lies beyond this limit? If you're thinking about the sound of a rocket, The loudest of all was NASA's Saturn V rocket from about 60 years ago, which reached an impressive 203 decibels. And although today's rockets are more powerful and have more thrust, they aren't any louder, since modern launch platforms use large quantities of water and special structures to dampen the enormous roar. The sound of the Tsar Bomba, the most powerful device ever detonated in 1961, has been estimated at around 224 decibels. Nuclear explosions and space launches are among the loudest phenomena ever caused by humans. But nature is capable of surpassing any human creation. In August 1883, the volcanic island of Krakatoa, in present-day Indonesia, exploded with a force equivalent to 200 megatons, so brutal that it destroyed most of the island. To give you an idea, the Hiroshima bomb was 0.015 megatons, and the Tsar Bomba was 50 megatons. And at the epicenter of that colossal Krakatoa explosion, the sound is estimated to have reached around 310 decibels. But what is truly terrifying is its reach. 160 kilometers from the volcano, a pressure gauge recorded 172 decibels. The sound had taken almost 8 minutes to reach that point, and even then it retained enough power to cause hearing damage and shatter windows. The sound of the explosion was so extreme that it was heard 4,800 kilometers away on Rodriguez Island. To give you an idea, it's like an explosion in New York being heard in Ireland or Peru, or like an explosion in Paris being heard at the North Pole or in Afghanistan. A sound that would take almost 4 hours to travel from the point of the explosion to its destination. And if that weren't enough, long after the sound was no longer audible to humans, instruments continued to detect the wave as it circled the Earth 3.5 times. This is considered the loudest sound in recorded history. But that doesn't mean it was the loudest sound in all of history. Krakatoa was a gigantic eruption, but on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, VEI, it's only a Category 6. The 1815 eruption of Tambora was a Category 7, and in prehistory, there were Category 8 eruptions such as Toba, Logarithmic, and Yellowstone, which ejected hundreds of times more material than Krakatoa. If we extrapolate from Krakatoa's eruption, a Category 8 eruption like Yellowstone could have generated a shock wave near the epicenter equivalent to about 330 decibels. But our planet can't create much more energy than these colossal eruptions, so we need external help to scale up. In this sense, the Chicxulub asteroid impact released 1 million times more energy than Krakatoa, and following the same extrapolation, it could have generated a shock wave near the impact equivalent to about 370 decibels. But even this famous asteroid pales in comparison to the collision that likely created the Moon. About 4.5 billion years ago, a Mars-sized planet collided with the early Earth with such force that it ripped off a piece of the planet and launched a huge amount of material from both bodies into space. 3 of those fragments eventually coalesced to form a moon. If we continue using the same extrapolation, that shock wave would have been equivalent to about 445 decibels. And we could try to scale up even further with supernovae, neutron stars, or black holes. There's just one problem. In space, you can't hear anything. Sound needs matter that can vibrate, like air, water, or rock. In a vacuum, a star could explode right in front of you, and although the radiation would obliterate you, the impact would still be powerful. In the vastness of a universe, you wouldn't hear a thing. So, with that in mind, we can allow ourselves one last extrapolation. Imagine how many decibels some of the most violent events in the universe would reach if they occurred inside an air-filled space. Next on the scale would be a large flare from a magnetar, a type of neutron star with an extraordinarily intense magnetic field that can release more energy in a fraction of a second than our sun does over hundreds of thousands of years. That would be about 525 decibels on our scale. Then would come a supernova, a stellar explosion so gigantic that it can outshine its entire galaxy for a few days. On our scale, that would be about 570 decibels. When 2 neutron stars collide, they produce a kilonova, an explosion so extreme that it forms heavy elements like gold and platinum. On our scale, that would be close to 590 decibels. And when two black holes collide, the violence is even greater. They warp space-time itself and release a colossal amount of energy in the form of gravitational waves, exceeding 600 decibels. But the real monsters would be the mergers of supermassive black holes with billions of times the mass of the Sun. Such a collision could be equivalent to about 675 decibels. By the way, did you know that negative decibels can exist? You know that 0 decibels doesn't mean absolute silence, but rather the smallest sound that humans can hear. Therefore, negative decibels are even less intense sounds. In the anechoic chamber at Orfield Laboratories, a place built to absorb 99.9% of sound, there's an ambient sound of minus 24.9 decibels, the world record. And what happens if you lock yourself in this strange room? Watch my video about the limits of the human body to find out.